Hey guys, no fooling around today. Welcome back to Lessons Learned, the podcast where we aim to turn our experiences into your wisdom. I'm Randy. I got all the boys here today, and we're going to be talking about managing your priorities. So, Chris, why don't you go ahead and take us into that? Yeah, thanks there, Justin Turner. Yeah, we're going to be talking about managing priorities today. I'm clearly Chris because you can tell by my poorly improvised Harry Potter glasses.
Oh my god, this is flawless.
Guys, do you think this is working? We got to pause. Do you think this is working? Do you think they're going to know that this is Chris or not Chris?
I mean,
Do you think they think I'm Chris?
Yes.
yeah,
Totally.
good enough. You don't
I
have.
think it was well executed.
I don't know.
You need
but I gotta hold
you
the
need
glasses,
plants in the
so this could be a
background, and then
problem.
you'd be solid.
Oh,
Yeah,
you're right,
plants
right,
and
right.
industrial lights.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So just kidding, guys. Chris is actually not with us today. He actually had a priority that he had to take care of, something for his job in the Air Force. So he will not be joining us today. First time since we started that Chris has got to miss one. So
Thank
we're gonna
God.
see how this
Is
goes
it?
without him.
Yeah.
So now I gotta try and reel this thing in. I don't know how this is gonna go.
This is a new dynamic.
But yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I know it's gonna be strange. So in all seriousness, though, we are gonna be talking about how to manage your priorities and why that's important, why that becomes an important factor in your life. So Jared, why don't you go ahead and start us off? What do you think about getting your priorities in order?
So I'm actually probably the least prepared for this episode. As you can see, actually, let's see. I'm sitting
Ooh.
on a cabinet or on a filing
That
cabinet.
looks like $1,000 Herman Miller chair right there. I don't know, dude.
Well, I mean,
Hell
yeah.
Can't beat that.
It has to be uncomfortable if it's that expensive.
I mean,
You
it's
know,
helping your
logic.
posture out. You have to keep
Yeah.
your back straight and everything. You can't just slump over. Yeah.
You can be sore.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm in my new house. There's
Very
literally
exciting.
just a filing cabinet and my desk in here. I just set it up.
Wait, I don't think we've
yeah.
ever announced this yet. But Jared is officially a homeowner. We've never said it on the
Ooh, golf
podcast.
clap.
Woo!
Hell yeah, brother.
Let's go.
Nice.
Congrats
Yeah,
again,
that's
man.
exciting.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Well, actually, so I think, sorry if I'm cutting you off here, but I think this actually pulls right into a good point. So you've been spending the last couple weeks kind of getting ready to move into your house. And because of that, you kind of handle most of our social media stuff for Lessons Learned. And our social media has been a little bit slower in that time. But that's because you had to kind of manage your priorities
Yeah.
and get yourself ready to get moved into this house, and the Lessons Learned stuff kind of had to get put on the back burner a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's tough. I've been thinking about that so much too. I'm like, man, I'm working on buying a house and I got to make so many calls. And I got to get internet at the new place. I'm in charge of a program at work. And then this week, I was helping out with a different, like a base wide event, which little spoiler or teaser. Ooh, look at that thing.
Oh, watch.
Nice.
Whoop.
Turning into a cyborg.
Yeah. We might talk about that a little bit later or in a later episode. But yeah, it's just like there's been so much going on. And unfortunately, the social media has not been a priority, which sucks because I love the podcast. And I mean, we do this for free, but the reason that we all are so committed to it and we've been consistent is because we enjoy it and we enjoy what we do. So not being able to post on social media and like devote time to that and edit and everything, it sucks because, I have like when I'm not working, when I'm not flying or doing a project at work, lately it's been moving or house things or just maintaining relationships really. And I have a couple other commitments for outside organizations like at church, and while that might only be like one day or like half of one day, I mean, it still adds up,
Right.
That's one day that you could use elsewhere, getting your house
Yeah.
ready.
Yep.
Yeah. So I just haven't really had a whole lot of time. And it's funny because this thing I'm wearing on my wrist will track my sleep and tell me how much I'm sleeping or how much I'm not sleeping and the quality of my sleep and everything. Yeah, so now that I moved into the house and I have Wi-Fi, the social media can become a priority again. So
Nice.
I'll allocate time for it, and it should work out. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just an example of how busy you've been. I mean, what was it? It was like 2 weeks ago. You asked like a couple of us, hey, I mean, not Randy and Joe, but a couple of people here in Omaha to like help you move, and you had to cancel on that because you got called into work. You were leaving like that. You were leaving like that
Oh
weekend
my
to go
God.
to like go to like Ohio and everything. But like that's the thing. You manage your priorities. Yeah, you wanted to get moved in and everything like that. That's what you want to do. But you have time sensitive things that had to get done that day or the day after. It's just like it sucks, but like you sometimes have to push those things that you want maybe a week later because, quite frankly, they don't need to get done right this moment.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because I actually forgot about that. I just left it. I just erased it from.
Yeah.
Not for nothing, Jared. That was like 100% not to call you out on that, but it was I think a really good example of when, you know, other things come along in your life, even things that are important to you sometimes have to get put on the back burner.
No, yeah, it's a really good example, and it's a present example. So I'm glad you used it. And then another example is last night. So we're working. Our friend Carolina organized this whole base-wide event where we're working with Whoop, which has these are like wellness, very highly accurate wellness wearable devices, and we're working with them. And last night, you know, they invited the Offit team that's helping with this whole thing. They invited us to dinner at like a really nice place, and they're like, it's on us, you know. And I really wanted to go because these people are awesome, and it's amazing that they flew out here and helped set this up with Carolina, and they're doing this whole thing, and I look up to them because I think what they're doing is awesome. But in the end, I decided, you know, that I was just going to spend time with Rachel because she left this morning. She was going out of town for a couple days, and I had already promised her that I was going to spend time with her. So, I mean, it sucks, you know. Priorities aren't always good. Yeah. And I think that's why why we're doing this topic is because managing your priorities is not always the most fun thing to do.
No, you're going to have to make compromises.
Yeah, you could have two really fun things that you want to do, you know, like a party or hanging out with your girlfriend, but you already made that promise, so I can only imagine how tough of a call to bail, I guess, on those people who were being awesome and going out of the way for you because, you know, you have to spend time with your girlfriend.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So just something I wanted to talk about kind of about myself. This is also somewhere where I struggle particularly. You know, I have a lot going on as well. I have a full-time job. I have my woodworking business. I go to the gym 6 days a week. I play on my baseball league. I have this podcast. So I just have a lot of stuff going on. And then on top of that, you want to try your best to have some sort of a social life too. But there's just some days where like people want you to do stuff. Like my one buddy is always asking me to go to Mets games. He has season tickets, so he always wants me to go to games. And I've had to turn him down like multiple times just because like, you know, I have a project, like a woodworking project for somebody that I have to get done, or we have a recording that we have to do. These things are important, and, you know, maybe it's not always more fun. Like I could say for sure, like some of the woodworking projects that I've had to do, I wouldn't want to turn down going to Mets games for, but like I made a commitment to someone that I was going to get this done. So I need to fulfill that commitment. And that's a big part of it too, is it's not always about just like what you want to do and choosing what you want to do. Sometimes it's about like, you know, I have a commitment that I have to make. So even though there's other things that I would really much rather be doing, I have to do this one thing.
Another big important life lesson, I think, personally for me, is never break a promise. So if you promise to spend time with someone, or you promise to allocate a certain amount of time in your day to this person, then don't break that, because then, I mean, if you do the opposite and you just go back on it, then, was that your mom, Randy?
Yeah, she gave me the finger. No recording.
That was amazing.
I'm proud of her.
Well,
What a power move.
To finish up what I was saying, yeah, if you make a promise to someone and then you break it, it shows them that you don't think they're important, or
Yeah.
you saw
Yeah.
something as
Right.
more important than them.
And if you do it that one time, chances are you're probably going to do it again. Like, yeah, you
Yeah,
could
you'll
have,
create a
like,
habit.
going back to you hanging out with Rachel, yeah, you could have bailed on her. And, I mean, guess what? If you did it just for a reason like that, you probably would do it again in the future, but you didn't.
Yeah.
You decided that it was more important to spend time with her. So, yeah. Like you said,
Yeah,
absolutely.
don't break promises, because it can just go into a snowball at that point. It definitely shows what your priorities are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True. I do think
And
there's
another
like
thing-
a fine line with that, though. I'm sorry, Randy.
No, it's okay.
But it's like sometimes unexpected things happen. So say you do promise to spend some
Yeah,
time with
that's a big
someone,
one, too.
especially with us being in the military, right? We're always technically on call. We can always get called into work. It's like, hey, I promise we're gonna spend some time together, on Friday.
Mhm.
And Friday comes around, our work calls you in. It's like, well, I can't bail on my job. I'm obligated to go in.
Yeah.
So that would always suck to break a promise, and obviously you have to manage your priorities there and go to work. But at that point, it would be important to make that up. You said you were going to spend time with them, and unfortunately you weren't able to because another priority came up. So you have to try your best to reallocate some time later in the future to actually fulfill that promise.
That's true. And like
Yeah.
that moment, if you did get called into work or something like that, I mean, it's out of your control for the most part, because
Yeah.
like you said, and again, managing your priorities, you do have obligations such as your job, especially in the military. Guess what? We have a contract. We have a contract saying, hey, we're gonna do this. So we have that obligation. And I mean, yeah, there's other priorities that you might consider more important for you personally, or maybe even for your family or something like that. But those obligations come first. And yeah, talking about managing priorities, obligations.
100%. That's a great example. I'm glad you brought that up, Joe, because that was definitely one of the points I really wanted to dig into with this, because I think sometimes people, and maybe not so much with jobs, but with other things, people tend to say like, oh, I don't need to do that now. And then that really puts you in a bad light, because now that like you have this obligation or commitment or contract, and because you've decided that to you on that particular day, it wasn't as important to you, that paints you in a bad light. And then when you're talking about like we talked about professional failures in the previous episode, you can even consider that a professional failure when you're not prioritizing your work. And even if you're not enjoying what you're doing as a job, it's still your job. It's still what pays your bills at the end of the day. So you still need to go into work. You still need to fulfill the obligations that you have for your job. So just because it's not necessarily the thing that you want to be doing doesn't mean it's the thing that you shouldn't be doing.
Right, exactly. I think something that that kind of sucks is that you try to allocate time for so many other people, so many things other than yourself as well. And it's very easy to get caught up, trying to give time to others, or just allocate your time or your priorities with everyone else, that you end up losing track of yourself, right? So if you try to hang out with certain friends on one day and other friends on another day, you tell your family you're going to hang out with them on the weekend, and you have no time for yourself, it's very easy to kind of get lost in that, and you end up failing yourself, because sometimes you need to take personal time. You need to focus on yourself. What can you do to advance your career? What can you do to advance other things in your own life? That if you're never focusing on yourself, because you're giving all your time and effort to everything else, that it's the snowball effect, like what you were saying.
That's a point that I've brought up in like past episodes 1,000 times before, and I know it's something that I kind of harp on, but I harp on it because it's probably to me one of the biggest mistakes that I've made in my life, where I kind of I put other people and other things in front of me so much that I actually end up in a spot where I'm almost holding myself back because I'm so focused on putting myself out to help other people. And at the end of the day, you got to remember, you are number one. And, you get to a point where you can't even help these people if you're not helping yourself. So that's absolutely an important thing too.
Yeah. Yeah. It gets to a point where you don't have any energy and you can't like fully, you can't be fully present when you're hanging out with those people, and it kind of like defeats the purpose,
Yeah, it hurts you and it hurts them because, like you said, you're not necessarily present. If you're like what Joe said, like you're going back and forth, maybe an hour here with a friend at a friend's house, next hour you're at another place, like person's house or something. That whole hour, like you're just focused on so many other things, and it's just you can't be there in the moment. And in those situations, I think it's important to take time. Like I don't know how often or whenever, but take time and like kind of review what your priorities are like in the moment. Be like, hey, what's my priorities right now? Career, like education, friends, relationships, whatever it might be. And you need to review those things because maybe people just get kind of caught in like the day-to-day just routine of life, and they just don't take time to really think things. Like maybe just for like months straight they're just focusing on like pleasing everyone else, and they just can't get out of that, and they just keep doing it until they just break down, because they weren't able to just take that moment and like realize, hey, I need to just switch the flip and just focus on something else for a little while. Yeah, they came organically.
Jeez, all right, Chris.
Where's my blue light glasses? Dang.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But you just need to take a moment and just realize kind of like where you are in life, and realize that the priorities that you have just don't get caught up in day-to-day life.
Mm-hmm. It's important to realize that you can never be perfect across the board. Like right now, personally, I can't be fully devoted to making improvements on my home, and I can't be fully devoted to my relationship, to my friends, to work. I can't, you can't be fully like into, yeah. You don't have enough bandwidth for that. So
not enough hours in the day.
For me, making priorities comes down to evaluating like which areas of my life am I lacking in right now, and allocating more time for that. It becomes a priority, and it's just going to be like a wave like that your entire life. You're going to have kids, you're going to have kids, so you're going to have to devote time to them and to raising them correctly, giving them attention, giving them time, giving them your love. But you also have a spouse that also needs your love. So it's always going to be like a balancing act. So you're always going to have to like constantly evaluate how you're spending your time and where your time is going, and like reorganizing that with purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Joe already said that there's only so many hours in a day. We only have 24 hours. Most people probably have 8 hours of work and then on average around like 8 hours of sleep. I mean, that only leaves you 8 hours to do something else with your day, and it's just not a lot of time, and you just have to really prioritize those hours that you have left.
Yep.
Yeah. And you also have to remember, you have to do it in a way where you don't get burnt out either.
Yes.
Because I've had times like I'm kind of feeling that almost right now, because I have my job still. We're trying to get caught up on the podcast because Jared, Chris, and I are taking that trip out to Montana in a few weeks.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, Chris is getting deployed in a few months.
Lame.
So we're trying to really get everything going, and now like I'm trying to get everything ready for this trip, and I'm finding like, oh my God, like I have all these things I have to do, and like I have projects that I have to get done now. And it's tough because you're just like, I'm going like balls to the wall, like constantly just trying, and I'm exhausted like every day. And then it gets to the point where my mind is going so much that when I do finally lay down to go to bed, I'm like wide awake. And I'm
You're
not,
thinking of the next things you got to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's not even that. It's just like when you're in like go mode, you're like, I'm in go mode from the time I get up till the time I go to bed. And then when I hit the bed, I've literally gone from like go mode to go to sleep. There's like that no in between where you get that little bit of like kind of power down and relax. So like when I lay in bed, it's just kind of like everything's still going boom, 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 firing on all cylinders.
Yeah.
So it makes it tough. And then, being tired and fatigue makes it even harder. So it's definitely, you have to do it in a way that doesn't get burnt out, or that you don't get burnt out. And sometimes, unfortunately, I think that means that you have to, put things on the back burner. It's like, again, it's like how Jared had to put some of the lessons learned stuff on the back burner with his move. It's not that he wanted to do that. It's just that that's what had to happen, because there was no way that he could, in a healthy way, balance. Like, I think that's what I was trying to say from the get-go, was like, you have to do it in a way that's healthy. Like, Jared could have still done all that stuff on top of moving, but it wouldn't have been healthy for him to do that. And you got to take your own, mental and physical health, for that matter, into consideration when you're talking about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's important to like cognitively like remember time as just like a whole concept, because I mean, Jared, he had times like he had to close for his house. Guess what? He's not going to be focused on social media or anything like that. Or you like right now you're grinding a whole lot with everything, including the podcast, but that's because in like 2 months you're probably not going to be able to do that anymore, because Chris is going to be gone, and we're going to probably miss some recordings and everything at that time. So it's important to focus on that time right now. And that's just your priority right now, because you know that in a future moment that you're not gonna be able to do it anymore. So you just have to be conscious about like the timeline of things, and I think that's the best way to kind of like think about your priorities. I mean, people talk about it with goals all the time. They try and give themselves like a certain date or a certain amount of months and stuff like that, and they can prioritize that goal within that time period. Same thing with your priorities. I mean, you have to get something done by tomorrow. You have a woodworking project you have to get done by next week. Guess what? You're probably, again, you're not going to be going to like some baseball games or something like that within the next couple of days if you have to get something done. Yeah.
Actually, a perfect example was this past weekend. So this past weekend was 4th of July weekend. I just had a ton of stuff I had to do. Like, I didn't go to any parties. I didn't go out to like watch fireworks or anything. I used that time. I ended up having a 4-day weekend, and I used that time to get caught up on a bunch of things I needed to get caught up on, and it worked out great. Unlike the last 4-day weekend I tried to get caught up on stuff, and that didn't work out at all. But yeah, I mean, sometimes you just gotta like not do things or like not hang out with people. Like, and I know that sucks. Especially with your friends, and your friends are kind of bugging you about going and doing stuff. Like, again, I'll use my friend who wants me to go to the baseball games all the time as an example. It's like, I would love to do that stuff. Like, that's, a ton of fun, but sometimes there's just stuff that you have to do on top of that. Or even situations like one situation in particular I want to talk about. Joe made me think of it when he was talking before. When Chris and Jared came out last year to visit, and we went hiking. So we went hiking. When we got there was no parking. It took forever for us to like find a spot. We actually had to park like further away, like halfway up another trail to do this. And then I had something that I had promised someone I would do afterward. So we literally hiked to the top of the mountain. Chris and Jared kind of hung out for a while, but as soon as we got to the top, I was like, sorry guys, I gotta go. Literally like ran back down, got back to my car, and then drove out to where I had to go. And like by the end of the day, I was like, I made my priority seeing Chris and Jared, because it's like I'm only gonna get to see those guys so many times throughout the year. But then I still went and did the other. I should have just canceled the other thing, because by the time all was said and done, like I felt terrible by the end of the day. I felt bad because I had to leave those guys early, and I was just like exhausted. Like I felt like I didn't enjoy any of my time anywhere, because I felt like I was just trying to bounce around way too much.
Yeah.
Right. That's why it's the problem of trying to please everybody that you end up pleasing nobody, and I fall into that trap a lot.
Including yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll give a real quick example. Christmas. So, whenever I go home for Christmas, there's friends. I only go home like maybe once a year. There's friends. There's family. My wife has friends and family to go see, and like for the first couple of years, like since I left home, like I would go home for Christmas and I'll try and see everyone. Like Christmas Day, it's like, oh, I'll go to like both my parents' house, I'll go to grandparents' houses, then I had my wife's parents to go to, and it got to the point where I'm just like, now when I go for Christmas, I'm like, I will spend Christmas Eve at one house, and I'll spend Christmas Day at one house. And because that's just how I function when it comes to like holidays like that, because I want to spend that entire day with those people. Otherwise, it just doesn't feel worthwhile. I'm not present. I'm not getting anything out of it, and I don't feel like I guess, being like, I'm not helping that relationship with that family member if I'm just like in and out all the time. So yeah, perfect example. You can't please everyone, and like I had to realize that very quickly because I just got burned out driving between houses for Christmas. Don't want to do it.
I think that's one of
very
the
common
best
in the military.
examples.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the best examples because it's just like you said, you can't please everyone. You're going to spread yourself too thin. You don't enjoy yourself when you're trying to do that. And then no one else gets to really enjoy the time they spent with you because it's like, oh, wow, I got to spend a half hour with him and he had to leave. Like, that kind of sucks too. So, it's a lot when it comes to that sort of thing. So, I think now let's get into what are some of the ways that we do things in order to prioritize. And actually I want to start with you, Talon, because you mentioned something that Gabby does before the episode, and I really like that, so I kind of want you to repeat that back for us.
Yeah. So recently my wife just came to me, like I think it was just a couple days ago. She's currently in Denver, so she's not started this yet, but she came to me a couple days ago, and I thought it was a really good idea, just managing her time a little bit better. And what her goals were for like each and every day, just dedicate 3 hours to certain things. So it was like 3 hours to like academics, 1 hour to academics, 1 hour to something like reading, and then 1 hour to doing like a hobby or craft or something like that. And I'm just like, yeah, that's a really good idea. And just like that, I mean, this is your priorities right there. If you put that aside and just like, 3 hours a day, do these things, just kind of like, especially if you put it on paper or something, I feel like you're probably just going to be a lot better at like accomplishing it. And you're just like, you're actively thinking to do these things, because versus me, I'm kind of like the contrast of that, and I'm very bad at managing my priorities, and I should probably do something similar, like actually dedicate a certain amount of time each day to certain tasks. Because for me, I kind of just like, I'll just be sitting there and just like, I want to do this. No, I want to do that. And it's just, I have so many projects all at once. I mean, if no one knows, I mean, of course I work, I go to school full time, I think. Yeah, I go to this quarter I am full time. And then like I have my dog, I have my nephew staying with us right now. Gabby's in Colorado. Like on Tuesday night, her dad called that he was like in the hospital. Someone else called that he was in the hospital, and like that night at midnight I bought her plane tickets to leave the next day, like I think it was like 8 hours later. So like, yeah, and like I medical appointments, like there's a bunch of stuff to worry about. But then
my
like,
head is hurting for you.
Yeah, and then it's just like like today, this is just an example. So like today, woke up at 7, and I did not know what my because I knew that I had a medical appointment at like noon, and I could not prioritize anything for the entire morning. I'm like, I have like 4 hours, I can get a whole lot done, but I just kind of sat there and just like watched TV because I'm just like I get stuck in my head, and I'm just like, oh, if I start a project now, I'm not gonna be able to finish it within this timeline or something like that. So I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna start it then. And then I get mad at myself, and then I get like kind of sad because I'm like, why didn't I not do that? Why did I just waste my time? Why did I just waste my time
all the time?
Yeah, and then
I did that the other day. I did it over the weekend. I was like, I got up and I was kind of taking my time in the morning, and I had a lot of stuff I had to do. And then I think I went out to mow the lawn, and I was mowing the lawn, and I looked at my watch, and I'm like, it's 1:30 already. I'm like, what the hell? I got up at like 8:30. It's 1:30. I've done nothing.
I know. Time just flies. Like, and, dude, I started refinishing my cabinets on like Wednesday. I was supposed to start on Monday for starters. So I waited two extra days to start this project. And then I wanted to get it done before this weekend because like now I don't have any cabinet doors in my kitchen, and I have to live with that, and it's not very fun. So they're just sitting in my garage, and I'm not gonna. Now I have homework, and it's just like, oh, now it's not gonna get done for the weekend. Yeah, I'm not good at managing my priorities at all.
I just find that hilarious. Is like, look, I'm like visually seeing your kitchen with just straight up nothing.
There's literally nothing.
Just plates in the open.
to guarantee, because I don't have to guarantee my dog doesn't get like anything underneath the sink, like cleaning supplies. I literally put her like dog gate in front of it, because I don't have any. There's no cabinet doors, or it looks it's terrible. I hate it,
I love that.
but I don't have time right now. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. Like, you know, even again, we were talking about when things are important, and like, yeah, sure, like getting that done is important, but let's also remember, like, you had all that other stuff that you had going on with like Gabby and her family. You had a medical appointment of your own today. Like, sometimes that kind of stuff just has to jump in front of that. So like, yeah, it kind of sucks you don't have cabinets right now, but there was other things that were just like, all right, this has to come first.
Yeah, like I have homework due on Sunday. Guess what I'm going to be doing this weekend? I'm going to get that homework done. Not as much as I want to do those cabinets. No, I'm going to be doing homework because I have that time. I know that it's due. I have that obligation. Well, I guess I could turn it in late, like, but I have my obligation to myself that I want a 4.0 GPA. So I'm going to get it done by Sunday.
Right.
So I literally have a due date, and I know that I need to get it done, and the other stuff I can do in the future.
So,
it's fine.
So as we were talking about this, I was thinking about the priority matrix, which I don't know if you guys have seen this chart, but I'm going to hold it up here. You probably can't see it because...
Oh, it's coming through pretty clear.
Do first, do next, do later, don't do. Okay.
Oh, dude, this looks familiar. I think I've seen this.
Yeah, and it's like on the bottom, it's high urgency and low urgency, and then on the side, it's low importance, high importance.
I like that.
How important is the task and how urgent is the task?
Let's talk about that real quick.
True.
I have my own matrix
that
I have that I kind of use. I want to get into that later, but let's talk about that a little bit first because it is similar to mine. But yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so maybe this is something worth putting on a whiteboard and just having in parentheses, you'll have the actions. So like do first, do next, do later, and don't do.
Mm-hmm.
And you have that on a whiteboard, or, I mean, pro tip, you can even use a dry erase marker and put it on a mirror.
You can probably link that down below.
You can
that's just a Google image. So.
Yeah, we can link it below, or maybe even even put it up on the post editing,
put it up on
like
the
post production. Yeah.
True.
So, and then just mark in like all your tasks that you have to do.
Yeah.
It'll help you. It'll help you like kind of visualize it and be like, okay, realistically, this is what I need to do right now.
Yeah, and it's brilliant because you have sometimes you have really important stuff that needs to get done, but it's not time sensitive. So it's important, but you can do it later.
So, the matrix that I use, and it's like, I don't know, maybe it exists out there as an image format. Otherwise, it's something that I've just kind of come up with in my head, and like it seems to work pretty well for me. And I kind of almost use it like it branches. Like you can kind of apply this concept to each part, right? But the first two I have business and pleasure. So I kind of put everything into like a business kind of column and like a pleasure kind of column. So business would be like my job for one. My woodworking stuff, like stuff that I'm going to actually make money off of. And then the pleasure side would be like going to the gym, like the podcast, baseball, like that kind of stuff kind of goes into the pleasure side. But podcast kind of falls in the middle. But I take those things and then the business side always comes first. So it's like I have my job I have to go to. That's a given. I have woodworking projects I have to get done for people. That's a given. And now like where that branch kind of comes in is I can now take the same thing with all my projects that I have to do. So like say I have 3 projects right now. And this is where it gets very similar to the matrix that you put up, Jared, where it's like, okay, I need this project done by this date. So that's kind of like my number one way of prioritizing is there a due date that I have to have this by? My second, and you might say I'm greedy for it, but it's just kind of the way I do it, is how much money am I going to make off of it? Like if I have a project that's going to make me $400 and I have a project that's going to make me $50, I'm probably going to do the $400 project first.
Yeah. Because
I'm going to, in the long run, I'll make more money from that than I will from the other one, quicker.
Value is a priority for sure.
Yep,
yeah,
absolutely.
Now that's also assuming that the $50 like if the $400 project I don't need to have done till October, but then the $50 project I need to have done next week, it's kind of like, all right, well, I'll do the $50 project because it has to be done next week. But Yeah, so that's one way I do it, and then I kind of do that like across the board. I do the same thing with the pleasure kind of stuff. So as far as like my pleasure kind of stuff goes, I put baseball first, and again, from a money perspective, like I paid to play in my league. So I want to go to as many games as I can. So the baseball stuff kind of falls on top, and then everything else falls below it. And then you just kind of base it off of how much time you have in the day, how much time you have in the week. You know, when you don't have time for the certain things, like if the business stuff is taking up more time, then it is what it is. Some of the pleasure stuff has to get put on the wayside.
Yeah, that's spot on.
I like to do it that way because at the end of the day, like I'm not retired. I still have to make a living. So anything that is like a business venture pretty much has to come first because that's my livelihood at that point. That's what's going to pay my bills. That's what's going to put food on the table. So that has to come first. Like I can't just decide that I'm going to skip out on doing all that other stuff because there's something that I really want to do that's fun. As much as that's great and it wants to be fun, or I want to do the fun thing, if I can't fit it into the business side of my life, then unfortunately I can't do that at that time. It doesn't mean you can never do it. It's just like a timing thing. Like, you know, this trip to Montana worked out nicely where I have, you know, the timing where I can do it. I have the time off from work that I can take to go on it. But had that not been the case, then I would have had to say no.
Yep. I think I guess I want to go back in time a little bit for myself. I think this is something that a lot of people
on the screen.
Yeah. Whoa, going back in time. But something that a lot of people struggle with is you know, balance between school and work, right? So back before I was in the Air Force, I had 2 jobs, was going to school full time, and I was getting into fitness at that time as well. And so obviously you're going to school because you want the degree. It's a further education. It gets you further in life. So that is a massive priority. You're paying money to go. But at the same time, your job also makes you money and you need money to pay for school. So
Vicious cycle.
it's a very vicious cycle, and you have to find a very fine balance with that. And on top of that, the one job that I was doing, I needed in order to graduate from college. So it was a very stressful time, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who's been in those situations, balancing time between 2 different jobs, school, working out, social life. Unfortunately, one of the things I got cut out in my life was sleep. I was living off of Rockstar energy drinks and frozen breakfast.
And you never turned back.
Never turned back.
It's a lifestyle.
Stuck with the lifestyle. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a tough situation. I know there's so many people who do the school and work combo, and it's stressful. You lose a lot of sleep with it, but you have to take a step back and, you know, what's more valuable? Are you able to fit everything that you need to do in your day?
Yeah.
And what do you need to eliminate? There was a lot of homework that I just skipped out on because I wanted to go to the gym. I mean,
The other thing,
it's tough.
sorry to cut you off there, Joe.
You're good.
But the other thing that makes that particular situation tough, and actually one of my coworkers is kind of going through that similar situation right now because she's going for her MBA, and the thing is, school doesn't care about your work, and work doesn't care about your school.
Yep.
So like your work thinks that, you know, work should be your priority. Your school thinks that school should be your priority. And neither of them are necessarily wrong. But then the problem is you get kind of pulled in both directions where it's like, okay, my job wants me to work extra hours, but I really should be doing homework. My school says I should be studying and doing my homework so I can do better on tests. So that makes it really hard. And I know that's kind of like something that she has fallen into recently, you know, because she was working full time and then she was a full-time student on top of that. And it wasn't even so much that, you know, she like necessarily didn't have the time, but she was just getting burnt out because it was just like, it was work, school, work, school, work, school. There was like no kind of pleasure stuff in between. And, you know, not for nothing, I know I'm kind of contradicting myself a little bit here when I said like the business stuff is important. Well, the pleasure stuff is important too, because that brings me back to the mental health aspect that I touched on earlier, where it's just like you can't burn yourself out because then it just makes you not want to do any of it.
Yeah. You just lay in bed all day. You wake up, you're like, oh, I need to do homework,
or
and you
or
just
you're
don't.
you're just in a terrible mental state where it's like you feel like you're just stuck. you hate your job, you hate doing your school stuff, and you end up kind of just like in a rut and feeling bad about everything, and it can be toxic to yourself, it can be toxic to the people around you. And luckily a lot of the people around her are very supportive, so I think she has that going for her. But at the same time, it's just like, she kind of has to pick one, and she sort of did that because she did finally go to my job and say, I need to work less hours because I'm putting so much of my school stuff off that I'm not doing well in school, and it's really affecting me because now, I was supposed to graduate in May. Now I'm not going to graduate till next January because I didn't pass classes I needed to pass because I was spending too much time at work.
It's a
So she that's kind of like what finally happened was, she found that priority where, she finally sat down and said, okay, like enough is enough. It has to be one or the other. And she chose school because at the end of the day, that's what was more important to her.
I respect that.
Yeah. And that's as it should. And granted, if she had chosen work, she chose work. Like, it's what's more important to you. You can't, that's the other thing, is you can't let other people influence your decisions when it comes to managing your priorities. Like, just because somebody's telling you that something should be more important to you does not mean that it is.
Yeah.
Like, it's not their life, it's your life. I mean, granted, a lot of those times, like, if somebody's saying, well, what's more important, school or a job? It's like, well, probably school, because you're going to get a better job out of what you're doing from school. But that's not always the case.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's people out there. I mean, imagine if someone, maybe they're going to school and working and everything, but maybe they have a kid and they need that extra money to literally put food on the table. School is going to have to be a lesser priority because you have an obligation. You have a natural need for like food and shelter and everything like that. And if you have like a kid, you need to provide that too. That is your priority. Yeah, it sucks. You're probably not gonna be able to graduate as soon, but I guess it's kind of timely thing. It's like you need to focus on that right now versus a future
and
goal.
You hear this sort of advice a lot when people are juggling a hobby that they want to turn into their own lucrative business and juggling a job. Like, if someone gives good advice on that, their advice is going to be, okay, well, focus enough on your job that is making you a living to where you can get by and you can make a living. Focus the rest of that time and energy towards the side business. And if it's only an hour at the end of the night, then maybe you need to focus more on the day job, or like focus on getting a promotion in the day job to where you get paid more. And then it's easier for you to sustain that livelihood and you can focus more time on the side business. But man, I've been trying to think about what I'm going to say next. And I just keep on coming back to this chart. And my brain is starting to hurt. Like, maybe I should just like start typing and like try to write a blog on this. But I was looking at this chart, right? Maybe we'll try to put a chart up on the screen for you. But at the top, there's this do first and do next. At the bottom, there's do later and don't do. And dismissing the fact that I think people don't like being uncomfortable, so they tend to do the do later and don't do as their do first. So they kind of like, they swap the bottom and top right there. So I think we do that, or maybe we do like one mistake that, I know I'm guilty of is I have an action that I need to do first. So like I make a task a priority and then I take care of it. But then there's this box next to it that says do next. And I think there's some latency there between the do first and the do next box to where, we finish this task or this priority and then we end up getting on our phones and we get on Instagram and we're like, oh, just scrolling on Instagram. Yeah. Next thing you know, you're watching reels for 2 hours and the do next task becomes a do tomorrow task.
Yeah, you just did a diagonal. You did the do now, completed it instead of moving to the do next.
And then
you did the
don't do.
Yeah, I think people do that all the time.
Well,
I know I'm guilty of it.
I mean, it's important.
I'm guilty.
It's important to take a break.
Well.
Sorry. Yeah, it's important. It's important to take a break, but again, you need to prioritize how much that break and how long it should be.
I think that's the point that I was going to get to was I think in that scenario, it's kind of almost like reward system. Because I think what happens, and I know we've circled back to this 1,000 times, but I think it's a big part of it is the burnout. So it's like, you know, you finished a project, like you're happy with yourself, you're proud of yourself that you finished that project, like you want to reward yourself, like whatever that means, like whether that means you get to go do something fun that you wanted to do, or sit and scroll through reels for an hour or whatever. And I think a lot of times, and I know I've personally done this where it's like when I'm just jumping from one project to the next, like I'll finish my project and then I do next, like I'm supposed to. But then mentally I'm like, oh my God, it's like I don't want to do this right now.
Delayed gratification, man.
Yeah. And that's true, but I think when you like do the next, and you don't allow yourself for some of that, you know, fun time, you get burned out. Like I think that's where you start to give up, where you give up on a certain thing because it's like I don't really want to do this right now because it's just making, you know, like I'm getting to a point where I'm getting frustrated just by the fact that I have more that I have to do.
So, okay, I agree with what you have to say. However, I think most of our audience is in their 20s. So I think that for a majority of our audience, probably like 90% of our audience, that's not the case. And I think probably a majority of our audience doesn't go on to the do next task soon enough. And they spend a lot of time just in a lagging period where they just go and do the don't do action for like 2 hours and then waste time. You know, a lot of us, like, we just have busy time in our days where we aren't accomplishing anything.
Correct. Mm-hmm. That's 100% correct. And I think because it's easier to just put stuff off, it's easier to procrastinate. And then you get these people, and I'm also 100% guilty, where I say, you know, oh, I do better under pressure. I do better when it's down to the wire. It's like you do until something goes wrong.
Yeah, there's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Yeah, like I've had projects where I've had one project I didn't get done for somebody. And it really boiled down to procrastination. And when I went to do it, I made a mistake. I used the wrong type of wood when I did, you know, the finishing part. And when I did the finish, it totally got screwed up. And I had to call the person and say, I'm not going to have it done. Because there was no way, like, the amount of work I would have had to do to go back. Yeah. Because I procrastinated. And, like, I had an ample amount of time, and I felt bad. And luckily, they were very understanding about it. But at the same time, it really was 100% on me because I waited till the last minute, and then I made a mistake. And then there was no time for me to correct that mistake.
Yeah, it really... procrastinating, it kind of gets rid of that buffer for failure, you know? Mm-hmm. So you don't really have that. And I was told in the past, you know, I've been told in the past that I work well under pressure. And that's because in the past I did have a history of procrastinating a lot. And, you know, maybe I did well and performed well under pressure. However, I didn't have that time buffer. So if I was procrastinating on something very serious, then it would probably come crashing down on me.
Yeah, and I also think that this is something that I think people need to do in general. And, like, it's something that I have done to myself, and, like, I've literally made myself feel bad about it. Because something that I've done in the past is, like, if something didn't come out as well as I would have liked it to, whether it's a woodworking project or whatever, and it's because let me put it this way. It's because, well, I had to rush because I didn't have enough time. That's when you have to take a step back and look and say, why didn't I have enough time? Because you may have legitimately not have had enough time, but I think more often than not, it's just your time management. Like, I've had projects where they didn't necessarily come out the way I wanted them to, and I kind of said that to myself, was I didn't have time to put the kind of effort into it. But then when you really sit back and think, it's like, how many times did I spend 2 hours on a Saturday morning watching Netflix or scrolling through my Instagram feed or doing something totally unrelated that could have been put off when I should have been working on this. So when you look at that and you say, oh, I didn't have time, it's like, well, no, you created a situation where you didn't have time. You could have had time to do it, but instead you chose to do other things that were less important, and then you made a situation where you didn't have time.
100% accurate.
Yep. I feel like everyone gets in that situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in all, I think everybody made a lot of good points today. I think one thing that we can really come back to is you have to figure out what's important to you and what's going to help move you forward. You can't let other people influence that decision, but you also have to make sure you're looking at it from a perspective of where you're going to go from that point. Like, is me doing this activity going to push me forward? Is doing this activity going to push me forward in my job or my hobby or whatever it is? And I think it's also important on top of that to leave time for the less important things as well, because otherwise you're going to get burnout. So you want to avoid the burnout. You want to avoid disappointing others. So the best way to do that is to just put everything into perspective, use a chart like Jared showed, or use a chart like the one that I had, and try and figure out what your priorities need to be. So one other thing I want to bring up right before we finish. Oh, God. So, Talon, you said that Gabby wanted to allot some time to read.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, here we go. We could kill two birds with one stone here, because if she wanted, instead of taking that hour to read and take that hour to do something else, she could click the link below. I'm pointing down. In the description, that gets you Audible free for 30 days. Everybody's pointing. I love it. Get you Audible free for 30 days where you can listen to all your favorite books instead of having to read them. And then you can do some of these other things that you find to be a higher priority while you listen to your book. So you don't even have to take the time to read.
Multitasking.
Multitasking. Prioritize your priorities. Oof.
I love it.
Boom.
All right.
All right.
Jared, take her away.
This has been Lessons Learned. Thank you for listening and or watching. We appreciate you. Let us know what you liked and did not like about the episode, or just, let us know your opinion. How do you handle your priorities? Have you seen the priority matrix graph? How do you balance importance and urgency? Let us know. And follow us on all of our other social media pages linked in the description. Now it's going to be a priority to start posting on there more and sharing more content. And we're going to be consistently uploading just the clips and more episodes. And this quality will get better once I actually have my actual camera set up. This is just temporary, me sitting on a cabinet, although it's quite comfortable. And don't forget, hydrate.
See ya. See ya. See ya. See ya.